I would like to say some words widening the perspective now a little bit, restricting the right of people to freely live out their faith or to live according to their deeply held religious beliefs is a terrible injustice wherever it occurs on the planet. Sadly, today we see more and not less persecution, and religious persecution especially today. More people are persecuted for their faith, and in more ways than ever before. This unprecedented rise is not only happening in the Middle East, but it is happening in Central and South Asia, it is happening in Africa. The top 10 countries with the most severe persecution indicated by the World Watch List represent these regions: North Korea, Iraq, Eritrea, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, Somalia, Sudan, Libya. And of course, these are only the top countries, but the list goes on and on and on. About 85% of those persecuted for their faith are Christians today. For millions of them, persecution is a traumatizing, destroying daily reality. ADF International is committed to defend those who cannot freely live out their faith, who suffer legal restrictions, social exclusion, violence, harassment, enslavement, rape, and even physical death wherever they live in this world. One way of defending those who suffer is to bring the facts and figures of the ongoing persecution to the attention of the international institutions, such as the EU or the UN. ADF International drafts and submits regularly universal periodic reviews to the United Nations. Among other human rights violations, we really highlight and we pay special attention on religious persecution or the manifold restrictions of religious freedom. Today, there is hardly any country in the Middle East, in Central and South Asia and Africa where Christians and other religious minorities enjoy full freedom, and especially religious freedom and respect of their rights. In North Korea, as we speak, and by the way, North Korea heads the World Watch List in 14 consecutive years now, 50 to 70,000 Christians are currently imprisoned in labor camps. Eritrea has become a country of particular concern, according to the US State Department, because of growing severe violations of religious freedom. These include the violation of the right to association, dissent, and expression. The US Commission on International Religious Freedom even asked whether religious freedom violations in Eritrea warrant a referral to the International Criminal Court. That shows how severe these are. Religion-related terrorist activity is on the rise in these and in other countries. In Algeria, proselytizing is a criminal offense and carries a maximum punishment of 5 years in jail and a fine of 1 million dinars. This refers to proselytizing conducted by non-Muslims only. Many Christian and other religious groups meet in secret, have to meet in secret, and in private or in business spaces, as their application for authorized worship places is rejected and delayed on a regular basis, and the government only allows worshiping in registered venues and places. In Morocco, Christians and other religious minorities are subject to violence and persecution at the hand of violent extremists, especially Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, AQIM. The group has committed kidnapping, extortion, torture, and murder. Churches and places of worship often become targets. Worryingly, Islamic extremism is also on the rise in Tunisia, partially due to the presence of ISIS in Libya, causing serious concerns about the destabilization of the region. There are reports suggesting that ISIS is infiltrating Tunisia in pursuance of their plan to establish the so-called Islamic State in North Africa. But the problem of Islamic extremism, unfortunately, is spanning much beyond the Middle East Another country of great concern, and my colleague mentioned it briefly, is Nigeria. Nigeria came on the radar of ADF International after the kidnapping, and we all know about it, of the 276 girls from the school of Chibok in Borno State, and especially because of the futile response to this kidnapping. They are still captured, by the way, as you know, certainly. The main source of persecution of Christians in Nigeria is Islamist terrorism, and of course, namely the group Boko Haram. The ICC has been considering the situation in Nigeria since 2010. However, the examination is stagnating. The lapse of 6 years without any significant process indicates a lack of urgency in solving this problem. This despite the fact that the situation is not improving in the country. On the contrary, since 2014, the situation has deteriorated significantly. ADF International has prepared memoranda and ICC submissions which clearly make the case that the situation in Nigeria ticks all the boxes for the ICC to get involved. And so the preliminary examination must proceed urgently to formal investigations. We sadly see similar phenomena in Asia. In Indonesia, persecution of Christians is increasing. But even in countries where Christians are the majority religion, such as the Philippines, Islamic extremism leads to severe persecution today. ADF International has also a desk in India and the wider South Asia region. We work in close cooperation with a team of about 25 lawyers there to provide legal assistance and training in the area of human rights and in the area particularly of religious freedom. Through our Indian partners, ADF International is contacted regularly by victims who beg us for legal help. And we engage in court cases in India and in the region with the hope to bring justice to these victims. In India, the so-called Freedom of Religion Acts, which are better known as anti-conversion laws, lead to growing persecution, social exclusion, desecration and burning of churches and worship places, harassment, violence and murder. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom in its 2015 report has found that the violations the government engages in or tolerates are serious, systematic, ongoing, and egregious. Several high-ranking government officials of the BJP-led government in India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi have made statements that tolerated or even encouraged violence and persecution against non-Hindus, particularly Muslims and Christians. And thus, probably the problem of most concern in India now is a general culture of impunity that is spreading. Nepal has adopted a new constitution last year, which includes an anti-conversion section, even at the constitutional level, copying the example of India. India, it's in national laws, not in the constitution, so it's even worse now in Nepal. This will lead to a very similar situation than in India. Just this morning, I had the privilege of listening to the Archbishop of Lahore, Pakistan, who was in this room until maybe 5 minutes ago, Monsignor Sebastian Shah. And he described the persecution in his country on the basis of blasphemy laws. They foresee death for making derogatory remarks against the Prophet and lifelong imprisonment for so-called willful desecration of the Quran. Pakistani minorities are accused and persecuted for alleged blasphemy against Islam and are executed and imprisoned. There are no fact-finding missions, no fact findings by the police or judges after these accusations. While these laws are themselves profoundly unjust, there is in addition a widespread misuse of these laws, which leads to baseless accusations and convictions, despite the fact that the innocence, in many cases, the innocence of the accused is well known. Asia Bibi is just one of these cases. The EU guidelines on the promotion and protection of freedom of religion and belief from 2013 state, and I quote, EU missions, in coordination with any relevant CSDP mission, will monitor respect for religious freedom or belief in third countries and will identify and report on situations of concern, including individual cases and systemic issues, drawing on available sources in and outside the country, including civil society, so that the EU can take prompt and appropriate action." End of quote. We need more of this appropriate action. We need more political will from the EU institutions, and we need more targeted responses. Sadly, we see that the EU is not using its full potential when it comes to the defense of religious freedom in the world. Two very short examples for this. The EU was involved in the drafting of the Nepal constitutions. They monitored closely the drafting of the Nepal constitution, and the European External Action Service was made aware of the inclusion of this anti-conversion section in the constitution and was made aware that this will most likely lead to systematic persecution of minorities, and the response was, we will not get involved. A second example, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India came to Brussels in the end of March of this year in the context of the EU-India summit, and several members of the Foreign Affairs and the trade committees here in this House wrote a letter to the leaders, to the President of the Commission and the President of the Council, expressing, and I quote, "our deep concern about A, the restrictions imposed on freedom of thought, conscience and religion in India in the form of anti-conversion laws, and B, the increasing level of intolerance against minority groups. These issues," the letter continues, "entail violations of freedom of thought, conscience and religion, which India is bound to safeguard as a signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights." End of quote. As far as the MEPs are aware, nothing in that regard was mentioned in the meeting. Where is the political will to address such situations? Where is the appropriate action here? The EU can and must take more appropriate action to counter growing religious persecution around the world and to promote religious freedom, freedom of conscience, and the rule of law. The creation of the Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion and Belief, who is present here, is a very positive step in the right direction. However, it is limited. It is a limited mandate of 1 year and with no institutional anchorage. While we are sure that the Special Envoy will do and what he can and will do well in raising awareness on religious persecution in many regions of the world, the EU can and must do more. What we need is an institutionalized, high-level and long-term position to tackle religious freedom in the world, to advance, direct and channel EU's action on the matter. Restrictions of religious freedom and religious persecution and religiously motivated conflicts are on the rise across the world. There is no more precious freedom of the human person and human communities than to freely live according to their faith. It is touching on the core, really on the core of the human being. And of course, as a consequence, there is no more severe and profound attack on human dignity than to deny, restrict, or even annihilate these freedoms. Thank you very much.